This is Growth Guide, a podcast exploring the depths of curiosity, questioning everything in the name of growth. I'm your host, Brian D'Alessandro.
Next to health, education is the most critically important part of our children's development, and I believe we are failing. We've become so obsessed with standardized testing and competition that we've completely disregarded the divine design of natural human development. There is a sequential process that makes each step foundational to the next. And I hate to break it to you, but the intellectual is not the starting point. And when we rush into developing the mental aspect, it's at the expense of healthy physical and emotional development. The results are tormented kids that grow into stunted adults with arrested development. The reality is that as a society, we're stuck in our minds, as Sir Ken Robinson's work on education reform brilliantly points out. And this is nothing new. Einstein spoke about this problem, and it seems to be getting worse, with our kids being more overloaded, tested, and competing to get into schools, but at what cost? We're experiencing an epidemic of children in middle and high school that suffer from anxiety, panic attacks, depression, body image disorders, and so-called ADHD. But don't worry, there's a solution that comes in a shiny pill, followed by another, and some bonus body bloating that you get to keep for good. Our kids are kept so busy with test prep, homework, after-school activities that there's no time left for being a kid. Now let's add on early screen use, which as we all know is highly addictive and designed to be, and destructive to young forming brains and nervous systems. But life is so damn hard for all of us, the screen makes it almost bearable for the kid and the parents, at least for the moment. We're losing our kids, and they're losing their imagination, creativity, connection to their individuality, their peers, and to the natural world. We're more obsessed with telling kids what to think and what not to think than we are in teaching them to think for themselves. But I guess that could only start if we start thinking for ourselves. These are all some of the issues my wife and I discussed when considering schooling for our son. She generally researched and took to the pavement, mining for gems that resonated with us much more than traditional schooling options in the US. But first, let's just take a quick step back and look at how the US education system got here in the first place. As some of you know, in 1902, John D. Rockefeller created the General Education Board at a cost of $129 million back then. The GEB provided major funding for schools across the nation and shaped the current school system. It restructured the U.S. education system to meet his needs by creating thoughtless, expendable cogs for his assembly lines. This has devolved further since its inception, but don't take my word for it. Ask our youth. Watch them. Listen to them. Feel into their reality. Do they seem okay? Not to me. I invite you to open your heart and mind to the possibility of another way. My wife has introduced me to some fantastic pedagogies at different stages of development, from RIE, Resources for Infant Educaring, to Peaceful Parenting, to Waldorf Education. Today's conversation is going to focus on Waldorf Education in particular. Waldorf was founded in Germany over 100 years ago. There's nothing novel about it. The results are consistent, and Stanford University recently conducted a multi-year, rigorous analysis of Waldorf education that resulted in a 140-page report and included 119,000 students. The results are clear. The Waldorf students were, as expected, generally more fulfilled and less stressed and anxious, but they also outperformed their peers in standardized testing despite never having standardized tests in their schools. Yes, Waldorf delays reading, writing, and use of technology, but for a very clear reason. Forcing someone to use a skill or a tool before they're equipped to handle it wreaks havoc on the system as a whole. The delay in developing these skills does not set them back. In fact, it propels them forward as these skills come online. There is a counterintuitive nature to Waldorf. I believe it's only counterintuitive because we're connected from the deeper truth. But that is for each person to discover on their own, or not. Now, I'm not pretending to have a perfect solution here, But for our family, it's been a beautiful experience and holds much promise for guiding our son in connecting with and developing his deepest self, his unique gifts, and his connection to the world around him. The focus, confidence, mind-body connection, and boundless imagination he and classmates exude are everything. I should also add that for parents, the healthy, supportive, and engaged community that we experience is a piece of our lives we were deeply lacking. For all these reasons, I wish to share our experience in hopes that it shows you another way, maybe even your way. Today we talk with a man much better equipped to speak on the topic. Dietmar Kasper is a Waldorf teacher in Germany. For over 20 years he's been teaching mathematics, physics, and offering courses in anthroposophy and Waldorf education. Dietmar travels the world, spreading the teachings of Waldorf education and supporting Waldorf communities. Now, it's hard to speak of Waldorf without speaking of its founder, Rudolf Steiner. Steiner was an enigma of a man and polymath, having made numerous breakthrough contributions to society. He developed a wide range of ideas, practices across multiple fields, including education, agriculture, medicine, architecture, art, and spirituality. Specifically, he developed Waldorf education, biodynamic agriculture, and anthroposophy, to name a few. Anthroposophy is a spiritual philosophy which focuses on developing three distinct parts of the human being: the body, the soul, and the spirit. So without further ado, let's get into it.
Thank you so much, Dietmar, for joining me today. I'm really excited for our conversation ahead.
Yes, I hope so.
I've been deeply moved by Waldorf and the approach, the philosophy, both for my son, but also for myself and my wife. It's really so packed with teachings and spiritual and personal growth. And I feel like I've been shown a secret path in a lot of ways. And it makes so much more sense for our children's well-being, their individuality, and for their future. I feel it's my duty, and I feel inspired to share that with as many people as I can. And I think today, you being such an expert and having lived this Waldorf path for so long now, it would be great to have you explain for anyone out there who hasn't heard of Waldorf, or even if you had, maybe suspend disbelief for just a little bit and get reacquainted to Waldorf, and it might even surprise you. So Dietmar, if you could tell us a bit about how the Waldorf approach works and why it works so differently than traditional schooling.
Yes, at first I have to say that the roots of Waldorf is in anthroposophy. You have to find it in anthroposophy because the founder was a man named Rudolf Steiner. He was born 1861 in Kraljevec. Today it's Croatia. Former time it was Yugoslavia, I think. And he gets up as a man who has supernatural capabilities. And therefore, you have to know that he founded anthroposophy because he says the future must be more spiritual for the people. Not only the religion in church or like this, the people will grow more and more into the philosophy and the spiritual science. This is one of his favorite tasks. Then he found it out of his experiencing, out of his life, where he was asked to educate a child when he was a student in, I think it was 1890. He was asked in a family to come and to educate a child who was a microcephalus, has an illness, a waterhead. I think it's the right name for this. And he educated this child because other people, other teachers, everything of state school and so on, they said there's nothing to do. It will be ill, this child. He prepared himself very long for this child, and he did a lot of lessons, about 10 years or like this. And then he succeeded. This child was educated well. It got the exams as a normal child. He wake up inside and he was more and more healthy out of this education. And at the end, he made the high school, he made the university, and he was a successful doctor in the end.
Hmm.
And this makes the people, they want to know, what is this?
And isn't that something that the origins of Waldorf schooling comes from, where we had a minority of children that were deemed either not fit for schooling or they were labeled as having something wrong. And at a certain point, we decide as society that they can't be helped or they can't be fixed. The fact that we look at it as they need fixing is totally wrong in itself. But now, fast forward to the modern day and age where I would personally say it's the majority that are suffering from these same ailments and being labeled as having ADHD or putting on medication for one thing or another. And
Yeah,
Waldorf, yet
yeah,
again, is providing
yes,
a refuge for people to come back to their true nature and to develop themselves.
that's it. Yes, you're right. I think so. In the same way, if you see the children, they come now, they have all something to solve. You have to educate them in a special way, and you have to know what is the base of education. If you see the most of the teachers in other schools, there's no pedagogy. They have no background about the essence of the child, and out of this essence of the child, you can create an education form. And this is the way Rudolf Steiner did it for the Waldorf education.
And that comes through in the consistency and continuity we see, where a lot of times a teacher from first grade will move along with the child all the way through school. Can you
Yes,
talk a little bit about the benefit of that versus traditional schooling?
yes. As you see, there is no economy system in the Waldorf school. There is no competition between the children. There is no grading. Only the child is characterizes what is this child like, and this is the main task. Every child has a special description. Century, nobody is like another. And each child is new, is different to the other child. And then you have to create the view inside the child. And the reason for the Waldorf education is that we say if you have in second 7 years from start of school up to the puberty, if you have one teacher whom the children can always get as an authority, they will be confident with him. They will have no fear, no anger, and it will be in the class, there will be a social community. It's difficult if you have 1 year you have this friends, the next year you have this friends. There is no social community in Thailand. And if you're in the third year, you have or another course with other children. This will make confusion in the. You can do it after puberty. There's no problem, but before they need surrounding which lets them grow up in a confident way. Therefore, we do 8 years, one class teacher from
Mm.
first grade to eighth grade.
And so it's interesting, while looking at children as individual and having their own innate gifts and helping them to find that, there's nothing wishy washy about the Waldorf approach. It's very structured. And as you're speaking to some of these 7 year cycles, can you break those down from 0 to 7, 7 to 14, and 14 to 21?
Yes, it's very important that you understand this because every 7 years there is something changing in the biography of human life. Also, in our age, there is something changing if you have a clear look inside. But in the first and the second and third 7 years, where the children are educated, it's very important and very precise. If you see, the child is born, we name it the physical body comes down to earth, and then you have to be in our pedagogy, you have to show him what he can do and what he not can do, but not with speech or with verbal administration, also by imitating. You have to be a role model, you have to be a good example, and everything what you do in front of the child, it will imitate, it will copy. And if you have some things you do not want to have, what the child should do, you should not do it in front of him. And then it's okay. This is the law for the first 7 years, I would say. The teacher, the educator, the parents have to be a role model for the child, and then the child will imitate everything what is in his senses, what he can see, what he can hear, what he can task, and so on.
And I guess the reality is that whether as parents we're intentionally modeling to the child or unintentionally, we're still modeling for them and they're still
Yeah.
learning to replicate and copy that behavior. I love as a parent, it becomes a framework for my own personal and spiritual development to be a better father, husband, man in this world. And
Yes,
it's there's a beauty in the approach in that sense.
that's the thing. Yes, and it would be good if the parents understand this and they feel in the same way like you.
I've been speaking about this lately as immersed in the Waldorf schooling. It's kind of funny. The children, they need this approach to really become their true self and to be supported in that journey. But in a lot of ways, the parents need it far more than the children because we've lived a much longer life of a conditional upbringing that is, in all likelihood, not in sync with this approach. And so I love the fact that we also get to adopt this and start to do some unprogramming and root programming for ourselves.
Yes, yeah, that's the thing. In Waldorf education, the parents and the teachers have to self-educate themselves every day new. There's no accommodation where you can stay as you are. Every day is a new thought to you, and then you are on the right way. We name it in Germany, we name it the teacher and the parents have a long life learning.
Mm,
It's a long life learning. You have
yeah.
never learned, you have never finished to learn.
Yeah. It's a lifelong endeavor.
Lifelong, yes. Even if you are like me, above 60, it's not finished. And all these speeches who say, oh, I would stay like I was 30 years ago, that is not the thing for education and for development.
In fact, when that happens, we become arrested in our development. And I think
Yes.
this is a good thing to reflect on because when we look around our society, I think we have a lot of individuals who are in leadership positions that
Mm.
have an arrested development at that emotional and physical level. And we're
That's
so
it.
overemphasizing the mental and cerebral activity we
Yeah.
disconnect from the heart and from the deeper sense of purpose and spirituality.
Yes.
And back to these 7-year cycles, what they do is they make sure foundationally before you move on to the second cycle, the first is completed. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because we're saying it's a 7-year cycle, but that's a rough estimate. It's really about these other markers, physical and developmentally, that show. So, can you speak a little bit about from 0 to 7? What are some of those markers, like crossing the midlines, the limbic brain, and aspects like that?
Yes, that's the thing. In the first 7 years is mainly educated the physical body, and it's built up in his precautions, not in the end. But this kind of role model to the children um, builds up the physical body not only outside but also inside the organs. It forms the heart, it forms the lungs. Everything which is done in this way, in this manner, will be in a healthy development in this 7 years. Each organ, there are many organs inside. And a lot of illness results out of this age. If you teach the children in this age with principles or in an intellectual form, or you give them computers and everything what they are doing now, it's foolish. You will hinder this development of healthy organs, of building up this way.
It's so funny how we try to cheat the system and get ahead by rushing, but
Yeah,
at what cost? And as you're talking about, when we have our organs that are still developing, we have our physical bodies that are developing in our systems, we have our nervous systems that are getting wired to the relationships we have and the environments we're in, which sets us up for how stable and grounded we are for the rest of our lives versus feeling at dis-ease and anxious We have the neurological systems that are developing. I've witnessed the effects of it. And as you bring up technology, I'd love for you to speak a bit about the approach to delaying technology. Again, it's not vilifying technology or labeling it as
No,
bad. It's about there's a time and a place for everything. And
that's it.
we develop sequentially, and it's important to follow that design.
Yes, I heard that the Waldorf education in Silicon Valley is very famous. I heard about this because all men who understand this education, like I heard Steve Jobs and so on, they say it's the best thing that the child starts understanding the computing after the ninth grade, in the ninth grade after the puberty, and then you can understand these things. As I heard, there's a good schools there in Silicon Valley and Los Angeles and the surrounding, where Waldorf schools are very famous. And there you can see that this is the right way to treat the things. If you have the first 7 years with the physical body and with the organs, with the sustainable understanding of this, and then you go over to the school ripe, when the child comes into the school, and then the things change. They have to change now.
And this is led by these developmental markers. So after the first 7 year cycle, that's signified by the letting of their baby teeth. So when they start to lose their teeth, that
Yes.
signifies moving into the second 7 year cycle, which is more about emotional development. Can you talk a bit about that?
Yes, then we talk about the life force or the life body of the child is born. In Waldorf education, we speak about three birth events.
Mm.
The first is the physical birth when they come to Earth. The second is with around 7 years. There is the life force. The life force you can understand if you see outside there are plants, and the plant is not the same as a stone. The stone is not moving and is not growing. The stone is standing on his place and he stays how he is. And the plant is always raising. It's raising and it's going to the sun. And this force, which lets the plant go to the sun, this force we name a living force or living body of the plant. And the children or the human being, we all have a living force. We can grow up, we can move, we can do these things like the plants too. This second 7 years is characterizes where this living body will be born when the teeth, like you said, change. And then there is a new method or a new task for the educators to satisfy the living body, what he needs. There's no more the time for role model and imitation. That's only the first 7 years. And then comes the thing with the memory. How does a child build up his memory? It's up about picturing stories. You always have to have imaginations in front of the child, because out of the imaginations he thinks in the memory like an image, like a picture, and then they can understand what you are doing. If you are spelling in concepts or in intellectual sentences, they will not understand in this age. It comes later after the puberty. Then you can do this, but not in this way. And the teachers in the Waldorf schools, they know this, they are educated in this, and they tell a lot of fairy tales, sagas, and idle histories, and so on, and all in picturing. And then the child can feels that the teacher knows how he is thinking now and what he needs now, and then he will follow him up. He will love the teacher because he knows what is the right thing now in the next 7 years. And
Mm.
this is a very important thing. There you can do a lot of mistakes if you are not aware of this second law, I would say, the law from the 7th to the 14th age.
It's a really interesting one too, because as you said, we can make mistakes and move it to the intellectual. And even though the children can't comprehend up there yet, because it's not fully developed, they can mimic there. And
Yes.
this is a mistake I've been guilty of when we were reading too many books and books that weren't quite appropriate. our son's able to mimic that, and we then think, oh, look, they're capable, look how smart they are, look how they're progressing, and
Mm,
we're taught to feed that and feed that. But the
mm,
reality is, I love Waldorf's approach of focusing on open-ended play. First of all, there's a very play-based aspect to that first 7-year cycle, which just develops and nurtures that imagination and creativity, but it's also empowering. It gives them confidence to be the creator of the story and to
mhm,
share that back in a way that's very unique.
mhm. It's interesting if you have your child or if you talk to children, you can make a test. I can do this in the class. If you talk to them in this age in an intellectual way, they will not follow you. They will turn over the tables and so on. They are not interested what you are doing. And if you tell in picturing, you tell in their memory, then they are looking, and you have to be aware in your thinking that you have always built up images to the child where the child can find himself, and then it works. I did it a lot of times, and then you see they are looking and they are laughing and they are with open mouth and they are astonished, and then this is the way they will more and more come to you and love you. And the class teachers who know this and with a little experience, they do this very good. They can also form their own histories, their own little fairy tales about some situation in the class where they are not satisfied with, and they put it in a not in a way to name the child, but they put it in the story as a picture, and then the child will take their own moral impulses out of this imaging, and they will solve their problems out of the story. And if you say to him, you dare not do this, you dare not do this, you can always let them suffer, that's the wrong way. That's the wrong way. You have to be, it's hard, it's not easy to do like this. You have to be a good fairy tale creator in this.
But we all know it's such a better muscle to exercise than the one of going into conflict and trying to fight your way out of a child doing something. It's a losing battle for everyone. We've all experienced that approach, and that's what I love. It's such a beautiful way to enter through the heart and connect through the heart and empower the child to connect the dots and make the decision themselves.
Yes, that's it. That's it.
It's such a beautiful aspect of Waldorf. Now, one of the other topics with Waldorf I want to bring up, because there are people that either misunderstand Waldorf or they're just so used to the traditional metrics of success
Mm,
that they say, oh, well, these kids, they're starting to read later, they're starting to write later. I mean,
mm.
the first 7 years, all they're doing is playing. And how
Yeah,
are how are they going to get along in the world? Which
let
is
let the children play. And no intellectual training in the first 14. It's let them play. The play will build them up. It's a good way. If you see today, the children, they are in school, they are forced very intellectual. They write every 2 days a new test with grades and so on. And they have always headaches and like this. They are fed up,
anxiety and stress.
anxiety and stress, all this, and then they come at home, and then is the next program. Computing, television, drive here, to drive there, to drive there. Everything is organized. There's no time for play.
Yeah, and that continues on all the way to university, right? This is something that comes up a lot. And the Waldorf school that we attended in Manhattan recently shared a documentary, which I'll link down below, that went into this. Kids get into this, constant testing mode, and then they're looking at what schools they're going to get into. And in order to do that, it's not just enough to get all those test grades because everyone's doing that. You then need the extracurricular activities and the volunteering. And some of that is good, but to a point, when you're filling the schedule where they don't even have a second to breathe, the nervous system is in that fight or flight state, that sympathetic nervous system state most of the time. And
Yeah,
by the time kids are getting to university, they're burnt out and they're having nervous breakdowns. Literally, it's such a disservice. Once you see it, it becomes very clear, right? At what cost? And I think that's the opportunity we all have, is to really ask ourselves, what does success look like as a parent? What is
Mm,
the best thing we could provide for our children?
yes. We have in Germany, someone had made a study because Waldorf school is now about 100 years, and they are also old Waldorf pupils. And they made a study about a comparison about the healthy between the state school children and the Waldorf school children. And the Waldorf school children in all parts are more healthy than the others.
I read some of one in the States as well because, look, I'll admit, when I first heard about Waldorf, while it resonated on that spiritual level, on that creative level and heart level, I was still like, but wait, is our kid going to be left behind? And is this going to be a problem? We'll get into what happens when Waldorf students do enter into either another school or the workforce or whatever that might be. We'll touch on that. But I recently have been reading on a study conducted by Stanford University, one of the top schools in the country. They conducted a multi year, rigorous analysis of Waldorf education that resulted in almost 140-page report. They chronicled this over a 5 year period, a big portion of them from third to eighth grade. And so
Mm-hmm.
I'll read a little clip of what I found from the report.
Mm,
Stanford found significantly higher positive student achievement outcomes on standardized state assessments by Waldorf students, greater engagement, and significantly lower disciplinary action and truancy. These results held across the subsets of African American, Latino, and socioeconomically disadvantaged students.
mm,
They also accounted for the initial lag owing to the planned Waldorf progression in education. So this is referencing the delayed reading and writing. It not only shows that children catch up. It not only shows that even though, despite they haven't taken standardized testing, when they're put in that environment, they're comfortable and confident to do so and to excel in comparison,
mm.
but also that regardless of where you come from, your social value placed on you in society, or your ethnicity, this works for you just the same.
Yes.
And that's so powerful. And
Mm,
I think that's
mm.
really important to parents to hear about. And I've started going down the rabbit hole also of who are Waldorf alumni, and you see incredible scientists, engineers, you see artists and writers, and the current CEO of American Express. And my favorite, I just discovered that one of my favorite stories of all time, the Neverending Story, which is coming out of Germany.
Michael Ende.
Exactly. Michael Ender. He was also a Waldorf student. And I saw that and I got full body chills. I was just like, it makes such perfect sense. This story that's about empowering a child, that shows them that they're capable of anything they could imagine, and all they need to do is to take action.
Yeah, yeah, that's
And that's Waldorf. That's Waldorf in action.
yes, it's Waldorf. Yeah, no doubt. Oh, there are a lot of examples of Waldorf people who are in the world now, and everybody finds his way in this. It's not the old tradition that you get the same thing as a father or the mother, but you have to find your own profession, your own way. This is also a big point in the Waldorf education, that you say, we as a teacher and parents, we have not only to educate them, but we have to help them to find their way, what they are doing here in this world, what they want to do, that they find the sense of their incarnation. That's a very important thing. Not to say, we need 40,000 engineers and we need such people. You have to do this. No, not this. You have to find out what is his task in this life.
Which is in many ways the exact inverse of what's happening in our public school systems. I'll speak for what I see in the US specifically, where you are told you have to conform and you have to not only perform, but you need to perform like this in this amount of time. And if you don't, then we're going to label you, and you are going to start to believe that that's who you are and that's what you're limited to.
Yes.
And I experienced that in school. I didn't, I was always more artistic and creative. And so I
Yeah.
needed to learn physically and experientially. At a certain point, sitting down at a desk, it was just made me go mad. So instead, I started acting out and I became the class clown. And,
Uh,
I rebelled in my own way. It
yeah.
reminds me of the famous Einstein quote: if you judge a fish by how well it could ride a bike, it'll go its whole life thinking it's stupid.
Oh my God. Yeah. Yeah, yeah. Uh, in Germany, we have a good picture for this in this kind. If you have to get the high school diploma, and there's a picture, there's a big tree, and they're sitting in front of there's an elephant, an ape, a duck, a snake, a snail, and then the director says, "Okay, everybody has the same exam. Who is the first on the tree?"
That's it, right?
That's it. That's it. Everything is doing on the same way, and it's equal who is sitting there.
So let's talk a little bit about your work specifically that you're doing in Germany. And just for all of our listeners, I want to point out there's over 1,000 Waldorf schools that are established around the world, and over 250 of those are in Germany. So there's a lot of schools there, and you've been working in the systems. And one of the things I heard you talk a little bit about is how when children from public schools aren't accepted into their next school, they're then kind of left with no other option but to come to Waldorf and try to come in. I'd love to hear about what you see in some of those students when they first come in and what happens through that process of them transitioning into this pedagogy.
It depends at what age they come to us. If they come to us in the first class teacher years, then it's different. Or if they come in the high school years, that's a little different because if they come in the class teacher years in the fourth or fifth grade, they will normally last half or 1 year, and then you won't find much difference between them because they are very satisfied when they come to our school because there are no grade, there is no stress, and so on. Mostly the parents send these children to us when there is too much stress and the child is always ill and sick and he can't follow the system. This is one of the main reasons.
Now, you might think that a kid that's been having to take all these tests, that all of a sudden they don't have to do that, that they might become a bit complacent and lazy because they don't have to. But that doesn't seem like that's what happens.
Yes, and this is not our task. We do not grade and make all tests and so on. We will take the child. He has to picture. It has to make moving, dancing, and so on. Have to needling. All things which are in the human nature. Steiner says one time. He says if the children have not made needles and put them in own pullover and like this, their own things, they
Hmm.
will later not be able to good calculation for mathematics.
And by the way, in the Stanford study, mathematics was one of the highest ranking aspects that was different from the regular schools. They far excelled in mathematics. And it's interesting you're connecting it to something like knitting, where also let's look at the social aspect. I know in our schools, especially if boys are doing something like knitting, they'll be made fun of a lot of times and picked on as doing something that's weak or girly, and this is obviously far from the truth. But what else do you see in the kids that are coming from public schools versus the environment? Because I've noticed in Waldorf it's such a tight knit, no pun intended, as we're talking about it, a tight knit community amongst the kids.
Yes, and the kids, they feel normally very well in the class community. They say if you have no tests and no grades, there is no concurrence inside. You have the feeling they are playing together. We have a lot of play, and outside we go a lot in the forest, and then it forms. They get one, two, three friends. They feel well in this class. I had a lot of parents which I talked to, and they say, since my child went to your school, it changed complete.
Hmm.
She's happy. Normally in the other school, in the morning, she says, I would like to go to school. And then she must go to school. It comes back, and then it was pale, and it was, and now she said she comes home. She's singing and she's laughing and she's happy. It's nearly a new person. Also, if they come from other schools, half a year, and then it changes. It changes the whole essence of the child.
And it's so beautiful to hear that it happens so quickly, because I'm sure there are folks that will hear this and listen to this and feel, oh, well, my kid's already doing this and they've been going there. The idea that if it's not working for you, there is another way and it's not too late. Can you talk to
No.
us, Dietmar, about when these kids graduate, either from eighth grade and go on to high school, or from high school, if there is a Waldorf high school, and go on to university? How do they generally transition?
Oh, no problem. Because they have all background, they have the forces, they have all bodies built up out of them. And then they, not in this keen way, rebel. They do it out of a calm, heartful situation.
Hmm.
We also have in Germany, we have the so-called Abitur. It's the high school exam, the end of the high school. Germany, it's named Abitur. Normally, it's not the task of Waldorf school to make the Abitur, but we do it because otherwise they can't study on college. And we do it. And if you see, this is totally different to our lesson methods in the first 12 classes. The 13th class is only learning, 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 and testing, 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 like in the state schools every year. This is only the last. And then you see the Waldorf pupils say, "Oh, this is stupid." I talk to them. I have the 13th class for many years, and they all said, "What a stupid way to teach children. It's annoying. They
Hmm.
are not satisfied with it, but they do it like it's not difficult for them.
Hmm.
It's not difficult, but it does not reach their heart." As I say,
Hmm.
what shall this? What is this kind of testing? And therefore, normally, not only the high school has to change, also the college methods have to change.
Hmm.
It's not adapted to the human being. In Germany, there was a way when the Waldorf Education Academies, they want to bring into the natural science direction of the college, they want also integrate the social science, so that you are not only taught as an expert in all details of the natural things, that you have also background in the social processes and in the politics and in other things, in art and so on. This should be the next step. After the world of education, we shall create colleges where you are educated with your whole person and not only in one direction, and to be the super expert professor doctor, but you have nothing understood from life.
I love that.
You sit in your room and you make more details, but nobody can follow you.
And these children are not wired for that. They grow into being adults that see possibility and approach everything with a curiosity and a possibility for whatever they could imagine. And when that's kept intact at an adult age, it's a very
Yeah,
powerful thing. I'm hoping that we start to create more businesses that are in alignment with this
yeah,
approach, and it
yeah.
really empowers folks to use their innate skills and gifts to do their work in the world with purpose.
That's it. And art is the main thing. Art has to come into the business.
Mm,
There must be art in every way, in every thinkable ways. There must be art in it, not only straight direction and intelligence. And this is one of the main problems, I think. Mm, you see, in America, I don't know how many Waldorf schools you have, 100 perhaps. In this big country, you have to have 10,000 or like this. This is a problem of how you look to the essence of a man. Do you only think it's what you see, and then you form only intellectual robot out of him. And this is the way they do. They do mainly in the world, everywhere. That's an intellectual robot. Text, test, test, test.
What's it look like on paper?
That's it. And certification and certification. And that is not the way to build up a human being.
Oh, I have a Steiner quote that I could share that in some ways relates to this.
Hmm.
Intuition is for thinking what observation is for perception. Intuition and observation are the sources of the knowledge.
That's the way.
Right? When we get into this intellectual, it's easy to label something and to just compartmentalize it. Whereas when we truly connect to it from a place of heart, from intuition, which is how we're connecting with art when we see it, it challenges the way we think. It changes the way. And that's powerful.
And the main thing what we are trying to do with children in the last 7 years from after the puberty is the intellectual training, the analytic training, and to connect intellectual thinking with the heart.
Mm.
They need thinking out of the heart. They need empathy. What we need in the future in every social processes will be empathy and not egoism. If we stay in the egoism, I would get more money, I would get more power, I would get everything, big cars, and so on and so on, 10 houses. This will lead to the underground. And the other thinking, if you have empathy to the surrounding and you are connecting to the empathy and you know that I can't live without my neighbor, without my friend, with the other, and I'm working for them, not only for me. And then you have the way, this is the way to find your heart in your thinking. And this is the manner that should be the future for all human beings. If
Mm.
it's not connected, these two parts there and there, that there will be no future.
Certainly one that we're not going to enjoy. And we're on that path. We see it unfolding.
Yes, you see what happens.
And even in terms of empathy, because empathy has become a buzzword for a
Mm.
while now. And
Ah,
people talk about it in the corporate place and in leadership, but it's easy to become a platitude that doesn't really get applied. The idea of empathy is not just, oh, how could I feel what this person is feeling and how can I connect with that? But looking at the larger system and being empathetic to the individuals within there and realizing, wow, this system is not working. How
mm,
could we reimagine what this container looks like to support the contents in a more meaningful way?
mhm, mhm. Yeah, it's not only the thing what you say. It's not only empathy. I will give you an example out of the teacher's training. The teacher make if there is a child who has a problem in the class, it depends. Then the class teacher can say in the conference from the teachers on Thursdays, they can say we make a child discussion. Every teacher tells his impressions about this child and with the way how can we help the child to get on his way and to get rid of this problem what he has. Then you have to engage as much as the faculty in this child is not there, it's only imaging, that you can make it alive in the round. You have to make it alive in the round, and if it's alive in the round, everybody has done his remarks about the child, and then it will be a picture, and this is more than empathy. There will be a picture of the child which you take inside your, and then the child will get like a little stream that you are all interested in him, in her,
Mm,
and the child will feel this.
mm.
That's supernatural. That's the living force and the feeling force which come between the teachers and the children. And after such child discussions, and the next year, if you observe the child, and you see there will be a change. You have not to say make this, make this, make this. No,
Mm.
not this. You have to take it in your heart, and you have to think and to feel with him or with her, and then it will start to help them to change. It's a way that thoughts and feelings get reality, and it would be more and more. You can observe this. I have some nice adventures if I can tell you a little story about this.
Please.
But
And this is really getting into the quantum realm as well. We're seeing in quantum sciences, this is
yeah,
being proven,
yeah,
right? The intention of the observer affects the outcome of the
that's
situation.
that's it. When I was in mathematics, was 12th class, I think, and there were children. We are in the exercising part in the school, and they get work to do. And there was a child which called me and said, "Hello, Dietmar. Kasper came to me, but do not say anything. I have a problem with this calculation here, but do not say anything. Stay with me and look at me." And I looked at her and she said, now I can solve the problem. And she
Mm.
always, when she had a problem, she calls me, but she said, don't say something. And there you can see there is it's more than empathy. There's a little stream between the teacher and the children where they get inspiration, where they get the way to solve the problem. And this will come up more and more. It's interesting.
It is so beautiful. Well, Dietmar, thank you so much for sharing today and for helping to open up the world of Waldorf for so many. I really appreciate all the work you're doing and thank you for your time.
Yeah, thank you very much for your introduction and for your support.
Thanks for joining us this week on Growth Guide. A big thanks to our sponsors. This episode is sponsored by the Permaculture Education Institute. You may have listened to the episode I did with founder Morag Gamble. She's incredibly knowledgeable in permaculture practices and communes with nature on the deepest of levels. The conversation we had revealed how returning to a healthy relationship with nature brings us internal peace and harmony. Whether in schools, prisons, on farms, or in our backyards, the result's always the same. Morag devotes her life to restoring our soil and enriching community. Whether you're looking to level up an established career or into community farming or being called to this field for your next chapter, the wealth of knowledge and wisdom Morag offers is paramount. This is where the Permaculture Educators program comes in. It's a global online learning community led by Morag Gamble. The program includes dual certificates of permaculture design and permaculture teaching. If you're called to be a part of the positive change growing around the world through living simpler, speaking up, and teaching permaculture, this course is for you. For anyone looking to make permaculture their way of life and their livelihood too. For more information, visit growthguide.love/perma. This episode is sponsored by Morning Man. Live manly, own the morning. I learned about this from UFC champ Frank Shamrock. He was always having trouble getting started in the morning without like 7 or 8 cups of coffee. No exaggeration, I've seen this in person. So he created this product that's packed full of 45 superfoods and it has 95 milligrams of clean caffeine, so you get that charge from the greens and also get a hit from the caffeine without feeling all jacked up. I'm definitely caffeine sensitive and I like this product because it doesn't make me feel like I'm bouncing off the walls, but I feel sharp and energized to get shit done. Visit growthguide.love/morningman to learn more and use promo code GROWTH for 15% off. I'd also like to thank our sponsor, Atmananda Yoga. You guys have got to check out their yoga alignment mat. I've been using this for a long time. As you know by now, I've studied and trained with them as a yoga teacher, and the mat is incredible to deepen your practice and to ensure a lifelong injury-free practice. Visit growthguide.love/alignment for more info or to buy. Be sure to use code GROWTH at checkout for 15% off. Make sure to visit our website, growthguide.love, where you can find freebies, exclusive content, and subscribe to the show so you'll never miss an episode. If you found value in listening, I'd really appreciate a rating on iTunes. I can't tell you just how important this is. Or spread the love. Tell your friends, your fam, heck, tell your spirit animals. And follow me on Instagram at growthguide.love. Be sure to tune in next week for our newest episode.